people who struggle with addictive and compulsive coping mechanisms, when we start talking about creating healthy coping mechanisms, we're looking at ways that you practice self-care. So how do you self-soothe on a regular basis in a number of different ways? A lot of people think that they're coping with what's going on in the external world, but the external world is just the trigger for what's happening in the internal world. And that's the thing that generates all the fear. For some people, we go into these really extreme coping mechanisms. And the question when they become extreme is asking, what is it that the substance or process is doing for you, not what it's doing to you?
So what is a healthy way to go into coping mechanisms where constructively we're not harming ourselves, we're not also not sitting with the emotion and not facing what our body is telling us?
It's all about balance. All about balance. That is probably one of the most important words that I use in some of the groups that I facilitate when people are asking me, like, how do I switch from this black and white, all or nothing way of coping with life that's just numbing my emotional experience? It's about trial and error to find the balance of things that work for you. So this is basically what we're talking about when we get into things like self-care. So people who struggle with addictive and compulsive coping mechanisms, when we start talking about creating healthy coping mechanisms, we're looking at ways that you practice self-care. So how do you self-soothe on a regular basis in a number of different ways? So, sometimes that can be through, reading a book, or it can be through watching a movie. It can be through hanging out with friends and having conversations. It can be through eating a healthy meal, but in moderation and in balance, right? So it's really about learning how to practice these things different ways on a regular basis. And that's why when we're putting a foundation in place, we have a big focus on structure and schedule, so that we can start to put these ways of practicing healthy self-soothing, of practicing ways that we're coping with the emotional state that we're struggling with on a regular basis each and every day. So that way we're learning how to do these things in a balanced fashion.
Yeah, and obviously you say in an unhealthy fashion, like that's very easy to see what those examples are. Balance. I mean, that's such a like it's oh yeah, just do it because it's easy to just do balance and just but how do I regulate? How do I go on balance? And to speak from my experience, I yo-yo. So
Yeah.
I go to the gym and I get in insanely really great shape. And I do that for 3 months. And then I decide I love popcorn at 10 o'clock at night, and then skip the gym. And then like my inflammation kicks in on my ankles and I start limping again and wondering, why do I do this? And I look at myself in the mirror and I say, okay, we'll go back to the gym and get back in shape. And then it just rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Now, those aren't unhealthy, but they're certainly not constructive. And
Right.
and there's definitely work to be done there on my side of my coping mechanism. I love sport. I love writing. So I sit inside of that as well. And, for me, I'll justify writing because like, if I'm not in a mood or I'm not inspired, and I use a lot of like headsets, I'm very sense driven. So I'm very auditory as well. So when I have a song I'm listening to, it puts me into that mode of state where I'm just writing and then my fingers fly. But that's a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And, then,
100%.
and I'm writing from what my human experience wants to express out, that I'm not able to do that. So I find that very therapeutic
Right.
as well. But again, there's a million different ways where I can just say, well, that's, obviously with the pandemic, people have their coping mechanisms exposed as well.
Yeah.
And they weren't really what you might call healthy, because if they were, you wouldn't see the fallout that we've been experiencing post COVID of all these fallouts of coping mechanisms.
Right. Yeah. So again, just kind of touching on what we talked about in the last conversation, the vast majority of time, these coping mechanisms are activated by fear that's in your system. So there is some kind of emotional experience that you're having, that your system is afraid that if I don't deal with this, if I don't shut this down, if I don't change the way that this is going in some way, if I don't avoid it, then I can't cope with the direction that this is going. So I need to do something in order to get away with it. That's what, when we're talking about being in a fear-based state, it's being afraid of what's happening internally and not being able to deal with it. A lot of people think that they're coping with what's going on in the external world, but the external world is just the trigger for what's happening in the internal world. And that's the thing that generates all the fear. So, if I'm at work and I'm constantly being pushed to achieve more and more and more, and I start to think to myself that I can't live up to this standard, this unrelenting standard that's being put on me. I can't keep up with it. I'm constantly going. I'm trying to cross every T and dot every I, but I just can't keep up. I start to become afraid of failing. And what will happen if I fail is I will start to experience the shame of failure, and I don't know how to deal with that shame of failure. So I need to start trying to escape every single day when I'm coming home from the fear that's in my system. And for some people, we go into these really extreme coping mechanisms. And the question when they become extreme is asking, what is it that the substance or process is doing for you, not what it's doing to you? Because
can you speak to that again? Like, say that again?
Yeah, for sure. It's not what the substance does to you. It's what the substance does for you.
So I think people are just going to shit all over you for saying this, right? So I want to clarify this right now, because like you and I've had this conversation. Anytime I say that terminology, I just get jumped on.
So when I talk in public, there's I used to give pre-COVID. I used to do quite a lot of talks through the Canadian Mental Health Association and through my own stuff as well. And one of the talks that I give is I give a talk about how drugs are not addictive. Yeah. Which literally throws people used to. I mean, I think people are becoming a bit more used to it now, but when I first started putting this out there, it would throw people into a spiral. What
the reaction?
Yeah, like, what do you mean your drugs are not addictive? My son is addicted, or my daughter this. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but drugs are not addictive. It's not what the drug does to you. It's what the drug does for you. If drugs were addictive, every single person who has a drink of alcohol would become addicted to it.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case. Yeah. For people who struggle with alcohol addiction, alcohol does something for them. Alcohol does exactly the same thing to every single person. What it does to people is it gets them drunk. What it does for alcoholics is it fixes some kind of emotional response that's going on in their system. It makes them feel normal about things. It makes them, it removes an anxiety. It removes inhibitions that might be in the way. So it's doing something for them that becomes addictive, not just what it's doing to them. So, when we start talking about coping mechanisms, and if they become extreme, we really want to start to understand what's the coping mechanism doing for you, not what it's doing to you. Hey guys, first of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the content. This particular chat was filmed as a part of the podcast series to support my good friend, Chuck Basti, and all the work he does as a mental health advocate at Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. If you want to see the full podcast or just see more of what Chuck does on his social media platform, check out his YouTube channel that's linked in the description below. When it comes to what's going on here, I am on a serious mission to make this platform profitable. Why? Because when I do, I am committed to making sure that every single penny of profit that's made from this YouTube channel goes back into serving the community that needs it most. So, as always, please like this video, leave a comment below, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to get all the latest content available right here at the Liberation Place. Come join us for our live online conversations every week. I'll put all the links in the description below, and let's get the word out there about living the life you want to live, not staying stuck in the life you're currently stuck in. Hopefully, see you soon.